The scoreboard read 3-2. The home crowd was screaming. But if you looked at the box score, the winning team had just played 20 full minutes of hockey without taking a single shot on goal. In any other professional sport, a scenario like this sounds impossible. In the NFL, you cannot score without moving the football. In the NBA, you cannot win without putting the ball through the hoop. But in the National Hockey League, logic is routinely broken. The NHL is a multi-billion-dollar operation where elite athletes train their entire lives to control every millimeter of a black piece of vulcanized rubber sliding at 100 miles per hour. Teams spend millions on analytics, sports science, and video coaching just to gain a half-second advantage. Yet, beneath all the tactical precision lies a terrifying reality. Hockey is governed by pure, unadulterated chaos. Sometimes, the superior system does not win. Sometimes, a team wins because of a rule written in 1965, a fog machine, or a 38-year-old accountant who was sitting in the press box eating nachos 20 minutes before stepping onto the ice. To understand how weird an NHL victory can get, you first have to respect the modern league. This is not open ice shinny. Modern NHL rosters feature hyper-specialized athletes whose conditioning, reaction times, and tactical discipline are at historical peaks. Coaching staffs analyze puck tracking data, expected goals models, and zone entry metrics in real time between shifts. When an NHL game kicks off, every line change is calculated. Every defensive pairing is matched to counter the opponent's top scorers. High-danger scoring chances are fought for in front of the crease, like land grabs. Because the margins between victory and defeat are microscopic, predictability is what coaches crave above all else. They build systems designed to eliminate variance. They want low-risk exits, structured forechecks, and predictable goalie rotations. But no matter how much money you throw at tactical structure, hockey remains a game played on frictionless ice with a frozen disc that bounces unpredictably off skate blades, glass, and stanchions. When human panic meets absolute statistical absurdity, the system breaks completely. There is no greater manifestation of NHL chaos than the emergency backup goalie rule, the EBUG. In every NHL arena, a local recreational goalie sits in the crowd or press box, ready to dress for either team if both starting goaltenders suffer injuries during a game. It is a contingency plan designed for extreme emergencies, built on the assumption that a rec league goalie will merely survive a few minutes while his team hides the puck. On February 22, 2020, at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, that assumption died. The Carolina Hurricanes were facing the Toronto Maple Leafs. First, Carolina's starting goalie James Reimer went down with an injury. Then, his backup Petr Mrazek collided violently with Toronto's Joe Thornton outside the crease. Carolina had no netminders left. Enter David Ayres. He was 38 years old, worked as a Zamboni driver for Toronto's AHL affiliate, the Toronto Marlies, and had undergone a kidney transplant a decade earlier. He threw on a mix of borrowed gear, a helmet with a Marlies logo, and walked onto the ice wearing a Hurricanes jersey to face one of the most explosive offensive rosters in hockey. What was supposed to be a comfortable blowout victory for the Toronto Maple Leafs quickly turned into a psychological nightmare. Toronto had over $40 million tied up in elite offensive talent featuring Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, and William Nylander. They were facing a guy who literally cleared the ice for them during morning skates. Ayres' first two shots faced went straight into the back of the net. The score was suddenly 4-3, and Carolina looked dead in the water. But then, the unthinkable happened. Instead of collapsing, the Hurricanes rallied around their emergency goalie with a display of defensive desperation rarely seen in the regular season. They blocked shots, clogged the neutral zone, and hit everything in blue shirts. Toronto, gripped by the sudden, suffocating pressure of an embarrassing loss, completely froze. They managed just 8 shots on Ayres over the final 28 minutes. Carolina did not just hold on. They scored 2 more goals on Frederik Andersen at the other end. The Hurricanes won 6-3. A 38-year-old Zamboni driver became the oldest goaltender in NHL history to win his regular season debut, beating the very organization that signed his paycheck. The Ayres game was not an isolated miracle. It exposed a fundamental psychological flaw in professional hockey. When elite athletes face an opponent, they are supposed to crush. Especially in amateur, the entire tactical framework falls apart. Psychologists call it paralyzed decision-making. In a normal NHL game, players operate on muscle memory and high-speed instinct. They shoot without thinking, because the gap between receiving a pass and releasing a shot is milliseconds. But against an emergency goalie, players start overthinking. They look for the perfect pass. They try to pick corners instead of taking simple shots. They hesitate. Meanwhile, the defending team plays with absolute clarity. When Carolina realized Ayers was in net, every player on that ice knew their only job was to prevent any puck from reaching the slot. They simplified their game to a primitive level. Dump, chase, block, clear. The absurdity of the scenario stripped away all unnecessary tactical noise, forcing one team into total survival mode while rendering the other completely paralyzed by fear of humiliation. 2 years before David Ayers, there was Scott Foster. On March 29, 2018, the Chicago Blackhawks were hosting the Winnipeg Jets. Chicago was out of the playoff race, but Winnipeg was a powerhouse heading toward a deep postseason run. When Chicago starter Anton Forsberg was injured during pre-game warm-ups, Colin Delia took the net. But late in the third period, Delia cramped up and had to be helped off the ice. Out stepped Scott Foster, a 36-year-old accountant who played in a local beer league on Sunday nights. Unlike Ayers, who gave up 2 quick goals, Foster stepped into a high-octane NHL environment and looked like a seasoned veteran. He faced 7 shots from a lethal Winnipeg lineup that included Patrick Lane, Paul Stastny, and Dustin Byfuglien. Foster stopped every single one. He made a glove save on a point-blank blast, cleared rebounds, and closed out a 6-2 victory for the Blackhawks. An accountant stepped off an Excel spreadsheet, played 14 minutes of NHL hockey, stopped 100% of the shots he faced, and walked away with a perfect 1,000 save percentage. Strange victories in the NHL are not limited to emergency goaltenders. Sometimes, the numbers on the score sheet look completely broken. Take the game between the San Jose Sharks and the Minnesota Wild in December 2016. Or go back further to the historical anomalies where teams won games despite being outshot by absurd margins. In 1990, the Quebec Nordiques were outshot 45-13 by the Montreal Canadiens, and somehow walked away with a win. Even weirder are the single-period statistical drop-offs. There have been instances in modern NHL history where a team generated 0 shots on goal during an entire period, yet won the game. How does that happen? A team enters the third period with a 1-goal lead, gets buried in their own zone by a desperate opponent, takes 3 consecutive penalties, and spends 20 minutes purely firing the puck down the ice to clear the zone. If a dumped puck hits the post or gets trapped in the corner, it does not count as a shot on goal. You can literally spend an entire period doing nothing but defending, register 0 official shots, and still walk off the ice victorious. Sometimes, the ice itself rebels against the sport. The most famous environmental anomaly occurred during Game 3 of the 1975 Stanley Cup Finals between the Buffalo Sabres and the Philadelphia Flyers. It was May in Buffalo. The arena lacked air conditioning, and an unusual heat wave struck the city. As warm, humid air seeped into the Aude, it reacted with the freezing ice surface, creating a dense wall of fog that floated waist-high over the rink. Players could not see the puck past the blue line. Goaltenders had to drop to their knees just to look under the fog bank to spot incoming shots. The game had to be stopped 5 different times so that the arena staff and players could skate in circles, waving bed sheets and towels to disperse the vapor. To make matters stranger, a bat flew into the arena, swooped down over the ice, and was struck midair by Sabres center Jim Lawrence. Buffalo ended up winning 5-4 in overtime, capping off what remains the most bizarre, low-visibility playoff victory in professional sports history. What do all these games have in common? They highlight the unique relationship hockey has with luck. In basketball, shooting percentages regression is predictable over a large sample size because the court is dry and the ball is round. In baseball, hitting mechanics are subject to physics that react consistently to pitch velocity. Hockey is different. A puck is a flat disc sliding on a surface that degrades every minute the game is played. Ruts in the ice, snow buildup around the goal crease, and deflected sticks create a level of environmental randomness unmatched in team sports. In hockey analytics, this is referred to as PDO, the sum of a team's shooting percentage and save percentage. Over 82 games, PDO usually trends toward 100, but over 60 minutes, PDO can completely detonate. A team can possess the puck for 50 minutes, hit 4 posts, generate 5 expected goals, and lose 1 aneo because a clearing attempt bounced off a referee's skate and slid into an open net. We live in an era of sports where everything is measured. We have tracking chips inside pucks, cameras analyzing stride efficiency, and algorithms predicting playoff probabilities before the season even begins. Yet, no algorithm could have predicted David Ayres stopping the Toronto Maple Leafs. No sports science model could account for Scott Foster putting down his tax forms to rob Patrick Lane. And no tactical breakdown can explain how a team wins a game without taking a shot for 20 straight minutes. The NHL's strangest victories remind us why we watch sports in the first place. Despite the multi-million-dollar contracts, the endless video review, and the relentless pursuit of perfection, hockey remains fundamentally unscripted. On any given night, the ice can tilt, logic can vanish, and a total amateur can become a legend before the final horn blows.